All right, last section before we wrap this episode up and have our conclusion. You know, in a lot of the videos and articles and stuff that are out there saying, you know, how the Bible's changed, you can't trust it, there's kind of this subtle accusation that somehow the Christians or the Bible keepers, whoever these people are hiding the changes that have happened, the typos that have been in certain copies over the centuries, and that somehow it's being hidden, and they'll flash out this number, 400,000 variants in the New Testament, that's total typos or whatever, and how, you know, that's just such a huge amount. Well, you know, two things to say to that. 400,000 variants spread out over 5,600 manuscripts comes out to about 70 typos per manuscript. Now, if you want to type out or write out by hand a 100-page manuscript and only have one typo per page, we're talking about, you know, misspellings, anything. You know, I'm going to tell you that's a pretty darn good job. So, you know, to say that the Bible has more typos than any other book, I mean, that's just mathematics, because it has way bigger manuscript base than anything else out there. And if you would, you know, say, well, the alternative option is to have, you know, a smaller manuscript base, like some of these books, like Aristotle, and, you know, where there's only 20, 30, 40 manuscripts available, they have way less typos than the Bible. It doesn't mean you should have more confidence in the reconstruction efforts. You shouldn't. I mean, you want a bigger manuscript base, and of course more typos comes with that, but it doesn't matter. Any textual critic out there would agree you want a big manuscript base. So, but at any rate, the hidden kind of accusation that's out there is that somehow these Christians are hiding all the typos and the variants that are out there, and they're not really showing them to the public and whatnot, which is completely fabricated. I mean, any respectable New Testament scholar has himself a copy of a Greek New Testament with what's called a critical apparatus. You can buy them on Amazon. Just do a Google search for Greek New Testament with critical apparatus. You know, Nessel in Texas is the big one right now. That's the one that I've got. United Bible Societies puts out one with the critical apparatus. And what the critical apparatus does is it gives you all of the major typos that are out there in any of the major manuscripts. Period. It'll just give them to you verse by verse as you go through the New Testament. And you know, so basically what has been done is all 5,600 of those manuscripts that we said that are available for the New Testament, surviving copies, they've been named and numbered. Okay? Yeah, talk about massive cataloging project. Okay, so yeah, all these, there's the New Testament graphic. All these 5,600 copies, they've been given names and numbers, basically. Most of them just numbers, but some of the major ones have names as well. So, you know, if it's a papyrus, they started with the number 1, and it'll be P1, then P2, P3, P4, P5, and whatnot. And then different classes of writing. If it's an uncial, you know, which is kind of written in capital letters, those are normally given just numbers starting with 0. So it'd be like 01, 02, 03, 04, and whatnot. So that you can get catalogs that'll give you a list of the names of all the manuscripts. So any Greek New Testament with the critical apparatus that you buy is going to have something like this right in the opening pages. And this is just for your convenience, you know, and it just gives you the name of that manuscript, the symbol. Like, for instance, this is the list, this is an index of the papyri. So P1 is you know, the papyri that's located in, you know, it's a papyri that dates from the 3rd century AD, so that's the 200s AD. So that's a pretty darn early papyri, and it'll tell you where it's located, and that's Philadelphia. You know, Papyrus 2 is located in Florence, dates from the 400s AD or 500s AD. Papyrus 3 is in Vienna, dates from the 500-600s AD. Papyrus 4 is housed in Paris, and it dates from the 200s AD. And so on and so forth. So this is, you know, they'll have all the papyri numbered, P1, P2, all the way down here, P34, and then there's the next page. And this is just in the first, this is in the introduction to your Greek New Testament with critical apparatus. You know, just reminding people out there, just a handy little index of the manuscript numbers and names. Okay, that's the second page of the papyri. I mentioned the uncials. Here's some of the uncials. They start here, 01, 02, 03, 04, and so on and so forth, 48, 50, 57, and so on. These are the major ones, and they have some other names, and then it tells you where they're housed. So the museums in London have some of the major ones, Sinaiticus and Alexandrinus. Okay. So yeah, the point is we have numbers, letters, and numbers that correspond to each one of these manuscripts, and we've logged all of the major variants. And so I'm going to show you a sample now from the critical apparatus. Okay, a couple samples. Before we get to that, so if you're reading along in your English Bible, okay, this is not the Greek New Testament with the critical apparatus. Let's take the, I was reading Mark 12, so I'm just picking a random page. I'm not like looking for the one with the least amount of typos or the most, but this is just Mark 12. This will give you a good sample of what it's like. Even in your English Bible, if there's a major typo or variant debate on some verse, it's going to tell you right there at the bottom of your English Bible. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this if I can. Okay, look at some manuscripts have resurrection, when people rise from the dead. Okay, this is on verse 23. So what they have for their reconstruction, this NIV reconstruction, at the text that they have, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 husbands were married to her? Okay, and this little B here is showing you that there are some manuscripts out there, some respectable manuscripts that have, instead of just resurrection, whose wife will she be, they say at the resurrection, when people rise from the dead, whose wife will she be. So in other words, some manuscripts add this little phrase, when people rise from the dead. Okay, now what is that? And how does it relate to resurrection? It's just clearly just an explanatory note about what the resurrection is. The resurrection, when people rise from the dead. So maybe some scribe, he's writing his copy and he gets to resurrection and he puts a little note in there. Okay, this word means, it's probably anastasis in Greek. This word means, when people rise from the dead. And then maybe over time, some copiers were like, I don't know if that's like an explanatory note or if that's part of the original. And so some copies actually have when people rise from the dead written in the text, but then some don't. So, and they're showing that that's a typo that's out there in some manuscripts. So again, the point is, first, is this a major typo? Whether or not this extra phrase it should be in there or not? Absolutely not. I mean, it makes absolutely no difference to the teaching. And secondly, they're being completely transparent. There's a note right in your English Bible telling you this, so Christians we're not hiding anything from anybody. All right, but yeah, I mean, and look, there's no major ones listed for, the rest of this whole page. 5,600 manuscripts out there for the New Testament. All these manuscripts. And they pretty much all agree with, the copies on all of them pretty much have this. There's no major typos that give any kind of difficulty, where there's actually a question of whether this was correct or some other one was correct. All right, so now I've mentioned this critical apparatus. I'm sure you want to at least look at it. Here's mine. So now when you, all right. Here we go. So you're reading along in your Greek copy. This would actually be the words that the original writers wrote, because they wrote in Greek. So, but yeah, your good critical apparatus here at the bottom, and this is the passage on Mark that we were just looking at, Mark 12, and it was verse 23, if you remember. Okay, well, this is showing us that there's no variance worth even noting the whole first section of this chapter. Now we're going to go to the next page, and here we go, verse 23, right here in your text, it's going to say, in the resurrection, ento anastasi, otan anastosin. Okay, so when people rise, okay, in the resurrection, when people rise, and there's a little number 1, and in fact they put it in brackets, shows that there's really some uncertainty. This could be possibly from the original, and there's just some honest uncertainty. But see, what you're going to see here is it's going to show you, and here's the numbers again that correspond to each of those different manuscripts. So like 1006, manuscript 1006, whoever that one is, has this phrase. And so does 1010 and 1505, 384, 552, Byzantine manuscripts E, F, and H. All these manuscripts have this phrase. They have in the resurrection when people rise. Okay, so which is just what our English Bible said in the footnotes. Some manuscripts have this added phrase, when people rise, this 2-word phrase. So then the critical apparatus is going to say, okay, but now here are the copies that don't have that added phrase, the ones that just have ento Anastasi, at the resurrection. And it's going to tell you Aleph, B, C, L, Delta, and these manuscripts, they all just have, and these two are very important ones, they just have ente Anastasi. So yeah, I mean, how much more transparency could you want? And then we have a couple manuscripts that have some little different twist, like this one has ento Anastasi, un otan Anastosi. They just have the added word un right here, and you have a few that have that. So, I mean, again, this makes little to no difference in the actual meaning of the text, whether it has this added explanation was original or not. And what you're going to find is, the overwhelming thing that you're going to find is, I read through my critical apparatus, and this is considered a hard one. It's a class C. Each of the variants has a rating A, whether A means we're just about positive we know what the original reading was, but here are some of the other weird variants that are out there. B is kind of like we're almost positive, almost certain how to reconstruct a text in some debated issue. And then C is the actual indication that there is some uncertainty, some genuine uncertainty. And you can see, even in the instances where there are C-rated variants, they make little to no difference on the major thrust of any passage or any Christian doctrine, period. No variant in all 5,600 one of these copies changes any major Christian doctrine. It doesn't change, that the written accounts are saying this guy died, and we saw him alive again, and he's coming back, and he's king, and here's the stuff he taught. And it changes no major Christian doctrine. So, okay, one more sample from the book of John. All right, John 15:16. My wife and I are reading this one together. We'll just take a couple paragraphs here again. So, paragraph 1, about the let's go here. If the world hates you, keep in mind they hated me first. Jesus, point blank, if you become a follower of me, some people are going to hate you. But this whole paragraph, look down here, we have no variants noted. It's just incredible to me that you have actually some paragraphs where there's nothing worth noting in all 5,600 copies. In other words, it's so clear. Maybe a couple guys have some spelling errors or some typos, but it's so clear from the majority of the manuscripts what the original reading was, there's not even anything worth mentioning. But let's go to the next paragraph, the work of the Holy Spirit, 15:26, going into chapter 16. Turn the page, and then okay, yeah, there's nothing here noted, nothing that the English translators felt was worth noting. Let's check on them in the Greek. Okay, here's John. Here's that first paragraph, the world hates you. And again, see, there's nothing even noted of all 5,600 manuscripts that are out there. There's no variants or typos even worth mentioning. So, okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. Okay, now here we do have one. It's B-rated, which means the text is almost certain. We know how to reconstruct it, which is probably why it's not mentioned in our English Bible like the C-rated one was from Mark. But here, let's look at this variant, all right? Here's what it says. It says, it's on verse 4, and it says, the hour of them, remember them. Okay, I need to get some context here because I don't remember. Okay, so Jesus is saying, these things I've spoken to you so that you may not fall away. They'll put you out. They're going to put you out of the synagogue, but the hour will come that all men who kill you will think they're performing a service to God, and they will do these things because they don't know the Father or me. Okay, verse 3:16. They'll do these things to you. So they're going to kill you, they're going to put you out of the synagogue, and they're going to think they're doing God a favor by doing these things, which is what happens to Christians today in different parts of the world. We see the fulfillment of this 2,000 years later as people kill Christians, claiming to be doing it in God's name, Okay, but I'm telling you I've told you these things in order that when the hour of them comes, you will remember them that I told you, that I said it to you. Okay, so he's saying, I'm telling you this beforehand so that when it happens, you'll remember I told you. Okay, but now we have this little footnote here, number 1, and then down here it's saying, verse 4, there's a B-level variant. So in other words, it's almost certain that we know how to successfully reconstruct the phrase, but there is some manuscripts that have a different phrase. The probable reconstruction is, when the hour of them comes, you may remember them. Okay, but some manuscripts have, when the hour of them comes, you may remember that I told you. It's hard even to know the difference. It's a difference between whether it's when the hour of them comes, you may remember them that I told you, or is it when the hour of them comes, you may remember that I told you. It's just that you may remember that I told you, or you may remember them that I told you. I mean, it's basically a horse apiece. No wonder the English translator, there's no note on it in the English Bibles, because it I don't even know how you would express that in English, the possible difference. And it's a B-level one, so the text is almost certain. But for transparency's sake, they give us that this one has, when the hour of them comes, you may remember. Aleph 1 has that. 557 has that. And the Cyprian Augustine manuscript has that. Okay, then these manuscripts have when the hour comes, you may remember them. So it doesn't have when the hour of them comes. This Aleph, this one, 1411, 180, 597, 700. So these 6 manuscripts have that. And then let's see, a few more have when the hour comes, you may remember them. So instead of the hour of them comes, you may remember them. Delta 565, 1006, 1241, 1243. And again, these are manuscripts, scattered among these 5,600. They're telling you that there are a couple slight variances in some of them. But as you can see, again, number 1, it makes no major difference. It's even hard to translate the difference between these. And number 2, nobody's hiding them. They're right here. You can see the variants and what manuscripts have them. You can go to the museums and read them for yourself if you want. Okay, I think we have successfully beat this horse to death to silence it's not going to silence people who say that, Christians are hiding things, but hopefully it will help you, the viewer of this, just plain be smart. Go ahead and buy a critical apparatus on Amazon and test your English Bibles and make sure that the guys are translating them right. I encourage everybody to test everything. I encourage, everybody listening to this, learn Greek, you know what I mean? And, but I will also say, someone who's spent years of his life learning Greek, you're going to find out that, most of the English Bibles that are out there are perfectly accurate 98% of the time. And the other 2% is, it's just because Solomon's anal and I think I would translate it a little bit differently, or something. But no major doctrine of Christian doctrine is affected by any variant, period. And the major variants that are worth noting, anything that's worth noting, is going to be right here in the critical apparatus available to the public for anyone to see and look up. All right, so there you go. All right, so are Christians hiding stuff? Absolutely not. Are the people, that the Bible scholars hiding stuff? Absolutely not. Be smart. Conspiracy theories are totally in vogue right now, if you haven't noticed, and they just plain make people money, okay? Every time you click on some link or go to some website or watch some crazy YouTube video talking about how the Bible is corrupted, or click on some trending now link, you make that person money. Okay, you guys understand that's how it works, right? And the bigger the claim, the more juicy the claim is, the more clicks these people get and the more money they make. So, you could write a headline like, this just in, Bernard Leonard's 1866 poem, Glasses, is found to have some corruptions in some of the copies, but, how many people are going to click that? That's not going to make the people any money. But, if they say, you get some, link on Facebook, this just in, the Bible is shown to be corrupted, or there's changes in the Bible, you're going to get millions of people clicking on that, and those people are going to make way more money. So of course they go after the Bible, because that's how they make money. Look at Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. It was completely debunked by scholars, and yet, he made millions of dollars, and it was also made into a major motion picture starring Tom Hanks. So it's like, there you go. summary statements. Oh, and by the way, he has a new book coming out called Origin. Probably he's picking some other juicy topic that's going to make him some money. I don't know, I'm not trying to be hard on Dan Brown, but he definitely is making a lot of money on just conspiracy theory stuff related to Christianity. At any rate, I do personally have a critical apparatus, like, a Greek New Testament with a critical apparatus. I use it, and I can tell you most of the variants are boring as they can be. And even the hard ones, like we looked at, they still don't make any significant difference in the text. There's only two major variants at the paragraph level, and they will be openly marked in your English Bibles when you get to them. And I'll just tell them to you right now. The last paragraph of John chapter 8 and the last paragraph of Mark 16. Those are the only existing paragraph level variants where there is some genuine disagreement among Christians whether it should be there or whether it should not be. And again, it affects no major Christian doctrine. So the bottom line is this. No variant among any of the 5,600 manuscripts, no typo in any of these guys' stuff, affects any major teaching of the entire Bible. And number two, we know all of them, and none of them are hidden. Alright, so in conclusion, the Bible wasn't made in some sterile lab, okay? Yahweh, the God who authored the Bible, his interaction with our race has always involved people, and he's always let people be the ones to copy it and preserve it. And let's face it, we misspell stuff, we make mistakes, and yet, interestingly, Yahweh seems okay with using imperfect humans. Now, call me crazy, but that actually strikes me as a little intriguing, somewhat humble, and something in me just plain likes it. He's a God willing to use messy people, and has through history. That actually gives me a ton of hope, But having said that, it does seem like he definitely watched over the process along the way and made sure we had tons of manuscripts to be able to successfully reconstruct accurate representations of what the original was. So the main question of this episode was, can we have confidence what the original message of the Bible was? And hopefully we have shown beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond any reasonable doubt, the answer to that is a very solid yes.